responsive design means to me empathetic design. Empathetic means understanding of humans and responding in appropriate ways.
I think a designer's role is to listen, learn about how people are living, how they're thinking, how they're feeling, and then use that as a palette and respond to it with a service that resonates and is relevant.
We cannot stop change. Change is an inherent quality of our planet. We aim at deploying design and visual languages as a way of understanding the changes, the dynamic of the planet, so that we can create a dialogue with them and maybe go from a disrupted dynamic to a positive one.
Now, we need to try to maybe merge the home office space. So we try to create more flexibilities and adaptabilities to integrate and to suit these changing circumstances in the world.
We strongly believe that what our clients are asking today is something that is going to be different in 10 years. So we need to design building that can change through time. Over the last 10 years, we really have changed so much the way we live. The technology make it change. Building should become some kind of platform that can evolve through times, from the technological point of view especially.
Designers and architects need, on one end, to understand all the transformations and be more aware of our time to create projects that deals with these multiple aspects of having a space that can respond to all these inputs and needs. This is very important because we are practicing in our houses so many different actions. So how can a space be transformed more? How can give a community space and a personal space at the same time? So lots of new questions for ourselves.
The demands on our home have become greater. The need to do more things in ultimately one location, which isn't always that large, has become palpable. And I think that the way to solve this in the future is to think flexibly. The traditional divisions and types of spaces we have in our home now may not be the ones that are labelled in the same way, or the relationships between them thought about in the same way. You know, fluid spaces, changeable spaces, ones that are hybridized, that you can do many things. One moment you can fold and close things, and the next you unfurl and reveal to have things that truly use a small space in a more flexible and practical manner.
Simplex is focusing on expanding the possibilities of limited space. We have a slogan, live beyond the limit. We are using the format of transformation and reinterpretations. So what is meant by transformation? We try to maybe buy movable furniture or a movable wall or a flexible layout to create a complex scenarios of living. So to create some new meanings of the space. So usually, first of all, we will analyze the context, the neighborhood. After analyzing, we come up with some solutions that maybe try to separate their living conditions into a few scenarios. And then we start to transform the scenarios into some design layout.
In my studio, I decided to have this kind of approach in which you can stay in one point and be connected to spaces, also to the toilet. And at the same time, you can also close with curtains and changing the perspective. every space respond to some needs.
We have a project called Smart Center. We try to integrate some smart technology. For example, a screen with projectors to have just like a cinema. And also we integrate some smart technology, which, for example, voice control for the whole system of the house. So we think that this kind of new technology could help the management of the house.
Smart home is about integrating technology, so embedding technology in a way to make the everyday easier, to create a infrastructure and connected suite of products that would all talk together to make everything easier and to give you more information about what's happening. That fundamental remains true, but I think the thing we've learned over that time period is that the home changes. It evolves, it is multifunctional, it is a space that you do many, many different activities, particularly in the last 2 years where we've been confined to the home. So all the things you do in lots of other places have converged in that one place. And I think the simple truth is the smartest homes are the most adaptable.
Our buildings are super technological. No? Buildings are more and more like hardware. Today when we design a building, it's a lot like designing a smartphone, because you just put a lot of technology in it that can be used in different way and have to be used in the futures also. So this makes the architecture today very different from the architecture even of 10 years ago, because it has to follow the evolution of technology.
The technology in architecture or design is not just limited to the kind of finished object or the finished building, but in giving the buildings and objects the potential to be more intelligent, to have even personalities, which goes beyond this kind of finished, static kind of object.
The smartest homes have a degree of technology in them, but it isn't embedded, because once it's embedded with the architecture, you cannot update it. And so it's about retrofitting to an extent, but it's about products that you can introduce and move and elevate spaces, but are ones that are flexible, updatable, and give you enough information, but the reality of all of your different products and services from different brands talking together is still a long way off. There's other agendas at play there where it's almost impossible for those brands to unite under a single umbrella. So I think it's about subdividing and compartmentalizing how smart various elements of your home are. But I think the expectation of everything coming together today is perhaps not the smartest approach to how to think about a home that is intelligent.
To use technology and sensor technology in the built environment is something what we try to bring also into the design of our buildings. Like today you can measure, of course, quality of the air, the way how you like to work with circadian light, for instance, or acoustics, all these things you can measure.
There's also aspects of connected homes, which I think is really interesting. So using AI, using new technologies, the home can be controlled. There's a really interesting study done in Boston where they had about 1,000 patients where they actually monitored them at home, and all of these patients had issues with their heart. And by monitoring them very carefully, they were actually able to reduce over half the number of people that then had to go to hospital. And over a period of a year, that saved about $10 million. And so these aspects not only improve people's lives at home, but they're also improving really important society issues. And never has that been more true at the moment when we've had so many issues with things around the world.
The technology we like to use in smart city concepts is related to blockchaining technology, sensor technology, the way how data collection can play a role in transforming new insights in the way how you reorganize the city. This is a combination of data collection, instrumentalizing that data collection through placing sensors in a place in order to rearrange things. And we do that also in buildings.
Well, today with technology, with sensors, with artificial intelligence, the skin of architecture can start to respond to us in a different, much more fluid way. The artificial intelligence is making our buildings, but also our cities or our objects, more and more similar to the natural world, something that responds dynamically to us. Now, if you got a responsive building, you can really try to optimize for different things. First of all, for instance, we can try to reduce energy consumption to make sure that we waste less energy in our buildings. But also an important thing is we can also make the working environment, the living environment, more suited, more tailored to people, something that can respond dynamically to their wishes and desires. So today we're in Torino, and for instance, the project we did here just a few years ago is the refurbishment and expansion of the Agnelli Foundation. And what we did there was actually use sensors in order to control in a dynamic way heating, lighting, and cooling into the building. Imagine like you got bubbles where you control heating, lighting, and cooling that actually are tailored on people living in the building. Of course, another thing we can do is actually bring nature itself, use nature as a building block for the things we design. But the two things actually need to come together. In a recent project called the Greenery, the whole project, the whole architecture revolves around the 10-meter high ficus tree. But at the same time, also sensors, artificial intelligence, make sure that the environment in the building is suited both for human occupancy and for other type of occupancy, such as the tree.
There is an element, I think, that is also very unique, perhaps, of our age, and it's that we are becoming more and more aware of a possibility for convergence of what we may call the digital realm and the biological one. And I think we are approaching the moment in which the two can begin to fuse. That really allows us to see biological organisms not only as biomass, which are actually providing us with information, with data, where we can begin to establish a channel of communication. And this communication, of course, can be mediated by digital technologies, but can also be mediated by art or can be mediated by design. There can be a visual kind of communication. For example, when these type of organisms are exposed to certain condition of light or pH, often they change color. When we know that this is actually corresponding to a change in environmental factors, this becomes a biosensor. If we can embed this kind of intelligence, this kind of biological response into the fabric of architecture, for example, automatically we have a sort of new form of meta-communication between architecture, the environment, and ourselves and our life. So this again opens up a new kind of paradigm where there is no more this kind of clear distinction between artificial and natural realm or between cities and landscapes, but really there is a kind of a much more, for us, intriguing and fertile terrain of opportunities in the fusion, in the encounter of these realms.
The primary objective is, of course, to make healthier environments and to make environments that are more attuned to the people who are in them. One of the things we learned was that the most effective way of trying to understand how people experience space is by using mixed methods. And what that means is that you don't just use objective measures, meaning what can we see from the outside on people's behavior, or data that lacks subjective context, like EEG recordings or skin conductivity. When we take those measures and combine them with subjective appraisal, which comes from people expressing how they feel, then that combination allows us to create a better understanding and in context for each data. So the best approach we found was that we needed both objective and subjective measures. The point of science-informed design is to help us understand where it's best for us to invest our resources to create a more effective design. And what we have is a spectrum of spatial qualities that we know are highly likely to affect an experience. So when we look at the evidence, it gives us a number of different spatial qualities that are likely to affect the experience that we're trying to create. When we work, we have 7 different qualities of the space thermal, light, air quality, layout, and so on. When we think of what needs to be adaptive or what would be good to be adaptive for us to optimize the experience, then we choose 2 or 3 qualities that should adapt. In my opinion, the role of technology in the built environment needs to be for the purpose of enriching our spatial experience in the moment. And that's a big difference from how technology is used now, that is often to extract us from a spatial experience. When you go into the metaverse, then your mind is extracted out of context. What kind of technology is good for us to integrate in the built environment? The technology that allows us to create better spatial experiences that support healthier social connections, that allow us to be in place and feel alive and support our aspirations. I think technology can do that, but we need to direct it to do that.
What we've learned about working on the technology-driven projects, whether they've got an interesting user interface, whether they have compelling services around them, when you're dealing with a piece of hardware, we try and tackle 2 things. So to complement and perhaps subvert the technology a little bit, we make sure that our products feel really soft, crafted, something that you could relate to that world of home interiors or lifestyle objects that you like to surround yourself with. Because if you don't do that, that technology product will end up feeling much colder. You're less likely to fall in love with it. And so we try and imbue those hardware products that are technology driven with such a level of warmth and craftsmanship.
And when it comes to looking ahead, we can't exactly look at the VR headsets that we see on the market today because they're going to be gone in 3-4 years. They will be replaced very quickly by new devices.
Now it seems like possibly like haptic devices are becoming a lot more compact, a lot smaller, like things that you can wear on your wrist. And also, I mean, the big thing is the headset becoming a lot lighter and a lot less invasive. There is developments on the notion of whether it will be heading towards AR glass, like basically glass where you can project images, or whether technology is steering to what is called pass-through AR, which is basically you're still kind of wearing a blindfold, like a headset, but maybe hopefully much lighter, that has cameras that are so high resolution that can give the illusion of you being perceiving an augmented reality.
So we think there will also be a renaissance in things and objects, and that we perhaps maybe could move in a direction where we no longer need new devices and new things constantly, but we can change what they look like. So if we're tired of our old armchair, we can certainly change the way it looks, which hopefully also comes together and speaks for a more healthy approach to physical things generally, which is obviously one of the biggest sticking points when solving the climate emergency. To make the home better when considering digital overlaps with the home, we often think that it's important to maybe actually not specifically use the word digital, but use the word media, because it encapsulates a larger framework of different tools. And certainly the tools that we consider bringing digital spaces into our homes, they're also media actually still, and they're going to remain really within the realms of media within the foreseeable future. The trend that we're seeing and that what will happen as media starts to become spatial is that either through what we already mentioned with pass-through VR, where our eyes are actually seeing through cameras, or if it's what we're calling augmented reality, which is literally our eyes are seeing light from the real world, the virtual content will be overlaid over our environment. That's the only really way for this to move forward, where the space where our body is in, because we can never ignore the body. Even if we're wearing a headset, our body is still somewhere. And even if we're lying down somehow in some kind of futuristic pod, our body is still in that pod. And for all purposes, if we want to have good livable spaces in the future, we need to use the spaces we already have as much as possible. And for the virtual media and the virtual spaces to be accommodating the spaces that our bodies are in. Certainly, we're going in a very interesting trajectory with the fact that in many parts of the world, living spaces are getting smaller and the virtual spaces are getting bigger. Our minds can be in very big spaces, but our bodies perhaps in quite small spaces. And that sync needs to be very, very careful for multiple reasons. One being that if that's not the case, then virtual media, VR, etc., will continue being something that only the wealthy can have access to. And they probably get even more expensive as they start replacing smartphones. Anything we can do with the body will probably eventually be able to be inside of spatial media. It's a slow trajectory where it's not just about virtual media and VR, but it's about the media that came before it and the one that came before it. They all connect to the same trajectory to conquer space in the effort of connecting humanity as much as possible.
When looking historically at the development of media, it's just a vehicle for ideas and people to travel without traveling per se.
The question of artificial intelligence and its role in the architecture profession is an interesting one, because when we think about the complexity of human experience and the number of parameters that we try to consider, then we end up with a very difficult picture for the human mind to comprehend. So I think the role of artificial intelligence here is to help us understand what our minds are probably incapable of understanding because of the level of complexity. I do see a role for artificial intelligence in architecture, and I believe that it's going to happen. It's almost inevitable.
The true benefit of AI, that it should be an assistant and it should learn and it should get better to be a better assistant. When you combine that with 5G, that's then really about kind of hyperconnectivity and speed and efficiency and doing something even faster. So you're combining learning and something knowing you better with achieving it more quickly. And when you can combine AI and 5G, I think you've got a palette which can offer a service or product that's really at the next level.
Form of robot. They improve the quality of life for us. We use them to do online shopping, so they also improve communication. Now, there are many situations where robots can help human society in a great deal. For example, in hospitals, we have increasingly shortage of health workers and medical workers, right? We have seen this time of pandemic, hospitals are often overrun and medical workers are very, very exhausted. If we can have robotic health workers, they can help human medical workers and doctors and nurses to take care of more patients. Another aspect, which is very important, especially in Asia, we are having rapidly aging society. In 20, 30 years, there will be a lot of elderly people. That is actually a very pressing need today already. We collaborate with geriatric wards and hospitals to provide conversational agents in the robotic body to entertain some of the elderly people, to help them exercise their mental muscles, so to speak, by having conversations with them. I can come up with many other examples, but I think these two, medical and health and quality of life improvement, this is going to become very, very important to us.
When we work on a smart speaker or something like that, we want our assistant to communicate with you. But how do you create an expression which is approachable, which is assistive, which maybe feels like a friend, which gives it a personality, which isn't just blinking LEDs at you?
I think the designers have to do a better job in designing the kind of robot that people can accept and like. So we need the design community to come up with the kind of form and the style and the voice and the behavior or gesture that robots should take, so that people can accept them at home. They must look good, they must look like non-invasive. I think it needs to be harmonious with our living environment. So if I have the robot that's not working, if I turn off the robot and the robot sits in the corner of my living room, it looks good. maybe something that adds to the design of my home. So it makes my home look better and then functional, and yet does not distract from my atmosphere, my design from home. So maybe give me some choices. Maybe I will buy some color or some shape.
Artificial intelligence is a label which is often misunderstood, often sounds a little intimidating or dense as a subject matter. And unless you're heavily engaged in that area, it can just feel a bit alien and a little bit overbearing.
Robots need to be empathetic in order to be accepted by humans. They do need to recognize our emotion, respond with the appropriate emotion, understand the minimum of sarcasm and jokes, and whether I'm stressed, whether I am happy, because that's actually a very, very important element of human-to-human communication. Imagine we're communicating without any facial expression, without any tone of voice that shows any engagement or emotion. We won't be engaging each other. And we will start to feel disengaged and alienated. It is very important for robots to be empathetic and engaging to the user. They don't have to say a lot, but they need to say appropriate things at the appropriate moment. And it's very important for them to react to our emotions. So how can a space better respond to human needs and mood in the home environment? Now, imagine our walls are no longer just like walls, but like it takes organic forms. What if the home environment reacts like an organic being? When I go home, I'm tired, it would morph into kind of a cozy, embracing kind of shape and form in my living room. And when I'm working, I'm concentrating, and then it morphs back into this kind of more like a library environment and so on. Your home is a robot itself because it understands you, it reacts to you. Think about the possibility of design there.
How to truly create the smart home of the future. It's about taking what we have, retrofitting it with intelligent hubs and intelligent areas that you can interface with directly, or with the most intelligent products you have, which is your phone in your pocket. Not necessarily introducing more hardware elements, but where necessary, putting products in places that elevate what we already have, so you don't need to buy new things, but use these smaller elements to elevate what we have to be more intelligent and therefore improve the everyday, but without creating an unnecessary impact on both the home you love and the world we love.
Tomorrow living will be having endless possibilities in limited space together. So it should adapt to the needs of people and the end users.
Tomorrow living will be mixed, hybrid, overlapped, and not one thing specifically, but many things at the same time, which will require a lot of cooperation and coordination, which ideally the media that we are trying to investigate helps with and makes that part better and more effective and more meaningful to people.
Tomorrow living, we will be living in harmony with technology. And I hope tomorrow living enables humans to be more in touch with our own feelings, more in touch with nature, with the assistance of technology. So technology will not be a barrier between us, ourselves, and between us and other humans.